Hello, this is Jamie Magridge. Welcome to Jamie's Craft Table. Today I want to show you how I made these cards. I was inspired because when I first got the stamp set I was a little bit stuck on it. So I did my typical, went back to cards that I'm comfortable with and did the block stamping. And I really like that, but I've done that previously, so I wanted to come up with a alternative as well. So I came up with this one. This actually is torn paper. Well, this was the first one I did without the, I'm not sure which one you'd like better, but I'm going to go ahead and show you how I did this one. So let's get started. You just need some scraps of paper. I have Granny Apple Green, Coastal Cabana, and Balmy Blue. I have a piece of Whisper White, which is 4 by 5 1/4, and a piece of Coastal Cabana, which is 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and then a card base, which is 5 1/2 by 8 1/2, scored and folded at 4 1/4. We're going to be using the Positive Thoughts, so we're going to be using these ones here, the Sentiment, and we're going to be using the Subtles embossing folder. So let's get started. First thing I'm going to do is tear myself some paper, and you want to tear it towards you. It doesn't really matter what size. You just want to tear yourself a couple of squares or rectangles. Okay, one of each of the colors. It doesn't matter how neat it is, because when you run it through the embossing folder, it tidies it up a little bit for you. And the one tip is, if you want it to be fuzzy, you want that part to be torn towards you. Or like I'm holding on to the part that I want fuzzy. Okay, so there's two. Let's do this one. Okay. Come on, tear. There we go. There's no right or wrong. It can be as big or as small as you want them to be. Okay, so I got my little scraps. So I'm going to arrange where I want them on my front of my card. Well, these ones are going to overlap a little bit, but that's alright. I'm bringing my wet glue, and I'm going to go ahead and glue them down. You don't want to put too much glue on it, because then when you run it through your embossing folder it might squeeze out. Okay. So now we're going to come in with our stamps. The only ink pad I'm using for this one, all I did was use the black ink. This one I brought in the Granny Apple. Okay, so I need a couple more blocks. I normally have these mounted before I start, but I forgot to do it now. Alright, and then okay. Well, there's two ways to do it. We can stamp it now, or we can run it through the embossing folder and stamp it afterwards. let's go ahead and, if I stamp it now, I'm going to have spaces. So it's alright, we'll do it anyway. See what I mean? But that's alright, we can fix that. Come in with our Stampin' Right marker. And just fill it in a little bit. Doesn't have to be perfect. Because it's kind of a sketchy design anyway. That way it won't show. Okay. I'm going to bring my butterfly in. Stamp that over here. My feather down here at the bottom. Okay, then the sentiment. Goes right across here. You know what, I think I'm going to stamp my sentiment after I run it through the embossing folder. Let's do the leaf first. Because I don't want that, I don't want to miss the spaces between it. Okay. Alright, now I'm going to run it through the embossing folder, so let me bring in my big shot so I can actually show you what I'm doing. Alright, oops, gotta put it this way so I can crank it. So I've got my big shot platform. I've taken away the thin detail die. I have my embossing folder. This one says Sizzix on it, so I need a clear plate. Make sure this ink is dry. Put it in here. The Stampin' Up logo up, and the writing you want, the pattern you want up. Put it so the fold is going into the machine. And crank it through. It's going to be a little bit tighter than it sometimes is because it's 2 layers of paper, but it isn't really hard at all. Okay, there you go. That's really cool. Alright, now we're going to come in and stamp that sentiment. Might blotch anyway, but it kind of makes it so that it's all one piece of paper. It's really kind of cool. Perfect. Alright, now we can assemble our card. Bring in the wet glue again. I've got black ink on my fingers. Go ahead and adhere this to the Coastal Cabana piece. Oh, I got ink on that. Line up 3 sides. Set it down, get only a 1/16 of an inch. Okay, I'm going to turn it over. Okay. Now I'm going to bring in my card base. Now you could pop it up at this point if you wanted to add a little bit of dimension. I'm just going to glue it down. And there we go. There's the card we just made together. Here's the one I did previously. Here's the one without the green leaf in it. And then here's the one I did. It's the same technique except I used the ink pads and the block and misted it with rubbing alcohol or water and then stamped it on. Well, thank you so much for joining me at Jamie's Craft Table. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I hope you can find a little bit of time to play with some stamps, ink, and paper.